This is the CCW Digital Speaker Spotlight Series. As always, I'm Brian Cantor, Principal Analyst for CCW Digital, and your host for today's discussion. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of innovation, particularly within the customer contact space. On the one hand, there's so much excitement, so much innovation, so many great ideas and technologies are merging in the customer contact space. Things that theoretically promise us the opportunity to more meaningfully, more powerfully, more efficiently, more effectively communicate with our customers and help our agents sort of have the information they need and the power they need to facilitate those stronger connections and interactions. But the downside is with so much buzz around these different technologies, so much conversation around new trends, be it automation or omnichannel or different kinds of analytics, it really becomes hard to figure out A, what's necessary, B, who are the vendors who are actually going to get me in the right direction, and C, once I kind of understand what technology I need, how do I actually go about making sure it resonates within my organization? These questions are going to be a huge part of CCW Nashville this January, and I don't just mean because we're going to have so many providers in our exhibit hall. We're also going to have a lot of our thought leaders, our practitioners, speaking about their experiences with contact center technology and sharing their recommendations for making the best possible investments. One of those speakers will be Anil Ravula of Anthem, who's going to be presenting the ins and outs of CX technology. But you won't have to wait until January to hear his thoughts, because we have him here today to share some guidance and preview his session. So Anil, how is everything?
So far, so good. Thank you for the session.
Definitely. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot of buzzy contact center technology out there, whether like it's automation or analytics. Everyone's really hyping a variety of different solutions. And so with all those recommendations out there, what are some recommendations you have for kind of walking through, sifting through some of that noise and figuring out what's really crucial for the contact center at this point?
I have several avenues out there. The first one is the existing investments you have. The second one is what are the business use cases which you need to solve. If you can come up with a simple proof of concept of the use cases, then you can leverage and go and analyze the different vendors. So to give an example, for the basic omni-channel point of view, we actually looked at the existing investment which we have made in a particular vendor and how we can take it to next level, because we are 90% covered in terms of the software or any hardware needs. So that's one aspect. But if we are evaluating some of the robotics and AI aspect of it, what we did is we basically took the use cases and we actually clubbed down into 3 top use cases to evaluate different vendors. So we looked at 10 different vendors, right from IBM to a new startup, and we looked at and how they can play a role in not only use cases but also supporting the healthcare industry point of view.
Definitely. And so are there any CX technology products that are maybe on the horizon, some newer solutions that you're particularly excited about?
Yes, we basically use Genesis right now for the current contact center environment, supporting more than close to 20,000 agents. But the new and exciting technologies which we are trying to leverage is the virtual assistant point of view, where we are looking at different robotics and AI vendors, including the IBM Watson, the Salesforce, the IPsoft Amelia, and then we are looking at very other different vendors from 24/7. So basically, we looked at different vendors. We actually, the team from my team, the architect team, actually took these use cases, evaluated and scorecarded these vendors in terms alongside with the business, not only from the technology point of view, but also from the business point of view. And we picked up top 2 vendors in terms of moving forward to do a proof of concept in the lab.
It's definitely great guidance there, and I think that's a really savvy approach to technology. But one thing I've noticed is that, and you mentioned a variety of different vendors there, and those all tend to be very good ones, but I know that there's obviously hundreds more vendors in this space. And one of the challenges I see is that a lot of technology providers, particularly in the customer contact space, they seem to want to position themselves as jacks of all trades, right? Everyone wants to be an AI company. Everyone wants to talk about what they do from an omni-channel standpoint, what they do from a voice of the customer standpoint. And so given that if you're looking on the website, you're searching for AI vendors, you're going to find so many companies that are basically telling you the same thing. How do you kind of decide, which vendor partners are really experts in these areas, which technologies are really valuable here versus someone who's just kind of using it for buzzwords?
Yeah, that's a great question because literally, when you Google search, you'll find so many vendors and everybody says they can achieve what we are looking for. The way I take the approach is I'll take the use cases as a fresh thinking or outside the box and see which vendors can solve these use cases. But that's my first way of analyzing. The second way of analyzing is how can this use cases or this technology stack which we are selecting can integrate with our current existing technology. That's the other way. The reason being, all these new vendors, they are talking about tomorrow, today and tomorrow and day after. But at the end of the day, we need to support today. So today's technologies have to integrate with them and also leverage some of the data which we have today. So I'll take an example of NextIT. This particular vendor, the reason is we use variant call recording and speech analytics and text analytics right now. The NextIT which we're looking at, this company was completely separate when we were looking at, but variant actually take over this company. And now we have an integration point where they can leverage the hundreds of millions of calls which we record on a day-to-day basis. They can actually apply their technology to easily integrate with the existing calls, what the customer problems are, or the customer satisfactions are. They can actually directly integrate with that and use these cognitive technologies and evaluate and get the decision points very fast. So that's one example. But so I would probably summarize and say that basically you need to look for the use cases, but also how it integrates with the current technologies.
Definitely, and I think one of the things about that, so you find the technology and it's supposed to be a solution, but oftentimes it has the reverse effect in many organizations. It actually becomes a headache. It becomes a problem. It makes agents frustrated. It makes customers upset about what's happening. So what are some of the mistakes you see? So even if you theoretically found the right vendor, when it comes to the implementation and the execution, what are some of the mistakes that you see organizations making?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest mistakes is people think about doing as soon as they do in the lab with the use cases, they basically go directly to production environment and implement it there. I would probably suggest to take a different approach, which I've been successful, is if you are trying to implement a newer technology, let's say virtual assistant point of view, I would say put it behind the customer facing. Just to give an example, we are actually trying to put this technology of virtual assistant, instead of actually putting it a customer facing, what we did is we put it to help the agent. So when a call or a transaction comes from chat or anything, it goes to the agent, but the technology which we are rolling out will be helpful to the agent first. This way, what we're trying to do is we can improve the workflows and everything, and at the same time, the technology is already learning because AI capabilities. That's the first way to implement. And the other thing is, the second step I would say is implement with in-house accounts, right? So once you come to a certain stage that they are, hey, this is good right now because we already seen for some time with the internal help, then why don't we put it to the account which serves your own in-house account? So especially for Anthem, we are a huge company, about 50,000 employees. We actually take our own insurance. So we implement technologies within our organization to help ourselves, and it's a good learning. This way we are not impacting the customer facing. We learn from it, and while we are doing it, the AI is learning itself, and we make improvements in the workflows, and then slowly introduce to the customer facing.
And I like that you talked about the agent facing and the customer facing aspect, because those are very important stakeholders in the process that are often overlooked when we make technology decisions. But I think that raises a broader question, right? I think one of the big issues you have is that there are so many voices involved. You have the C-level, the executive team, they want to make decisions here. You have the IT, technology department, they want to make decisions. You have the contact center team and their leaders, they want to make decisions. And so, how do you balance all those voices to make sure that you're getting the right perspective and that every stakeholder is happy, but that you're ultimately benefiting the business, the customer experience, and the agent experience?
Exactly, and I think this is a constant challenge, right? But I talked about use cases. I've been in many meetings. In fact, I'm coming from a meeting where business are deciding the use cases based on the solutions they're thinking about. One thing I always say to our business partners is, think what you want to do your customers. Do not take solutions into account and come up with the use cases, what you want to achieve, right? And then let the technology team do the evaluation point of view, which technology will fit in, not only for these use cases, but to end-to-end point of view for the organization, with the current technologies, with the current process and everything. And the third thing is, as I said, by doing the technology scorecards, even if there's an influence from the C level, I actually can take the scorecard and say, hey, you know what, we did the scorecard with the architects who are the smart people, where they actually recommended this particular solution. But again, I want to say I always keep these guys in the loop. This way, we are making sure that we are updating the progress on what we are doing, not only from the business point of view and from the C-level point of view, but I would like to say more of a black and white in terms of evaluation aspect. Our company especially is agile. We are using agile methodologies, so we are very close with our business product managers, business product owners. So we interact much more often. We update them. But one request I always say to them is, just think from your point of view how we can better service the customer. Let the solution aspect of it, leave it to the smart people or the architects. And we will combinedly make a scorecard system. This way we can combinedly select.
And then once you make the decision, right? I mean, what are some best practices for keeping that buy-in and really starting to show the results and just making the right decisions after the fact during the implementation process?
Again, I rely on what we do internally, right? But the proof of concept / the pilot which we do internally, the learning from it, not only learning from in terms of the technology point of view, the implementation aspect of it, some of the changes which we do, I personally rely on those and will leverage those steps to keep us going.
Great. So I think, and that, obviously touches on some of your expertise on the technology side, and I know that you're going to be sharing a lot more insights when we actually get to Nashville. But before we wrap up here, I wanted to get to know you a little bit, and we've been asking some of our speakers to kind of answer some questions about themselves, because this is a conference. You're not just writing a paper. You're not just speaking on a webinar. There's going to be chances to get to know our speakers, and I think it'd be great as a great starting point here to get to know you a little bit. So first of all, have you ever been to Nashville?
Yeah, actually, coincidentally, this last week was my first visit to Nashville. I was in Nashville on a particularly different meeting. So I would say yes. And this is only I'm just coming back from it, and I had a good preview of Nashville.
And you didn't cancel your speaking engagement, so I guess you liked it enough to want to go back there in January, which is good. So, where else do you like to vacation? I mean, what's your favorite place to vacation?
I have been to many different places, but I particularly like about visiting Alaska. I did a glacier tour, took helicopters there, and did a dog sledging, which actually stands out with all the vacations I've done.
Now, what is your biggest guilty pleasure?
Drinking. I like to say once of a very working. I go to business meetings after doing a really hard-working day. I would like to chill out with my business partners or business colleagues, or so that would be, I would say, even though I'm drinking, but it's a pleasure.
Yeah, you won't have to feel guilty about it at CCW. We'll definitely have some cocktail functions and opportunities to, kick back after a long day of learning. And then, maybe a little bit more formal, but do you have any business role models, companies or people that you really admire in this space?
Yes, definitely. There's always leaders who I don't interact, like Google CEO and Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, who come from the place I'm from, but I don't interact with them. But they're my role models or mentors, I would say, is my immediate supervisor. There's one particular supervisor who is not with Anthem anymore, but he's a role model for me to grow and to not only to grow but to manage the situations. So.
And then, for some, you're going to be a role model yourself. I mean, there's going to be people here who hear your sessions, hear your success story, and they want to learn what it takes to get there. So, do you have any advice for those who are evolving and growing in their careers as customer contact or technology professionals?
Yeah, I use this mantra for myself and my team, and I always relay to any conversations I have with my team is let your actions speak. There are a lot of people who make perceptions about you, they think about you a certain way, but at the end of the day, if you deliver, if you make progress, everybody, whatever their perception is, they would like to see the results and come up with, make sure that your actions speak. Deliver and come out with good results so the perceptions around people can change or improve.
Well, Anil, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights have been extremely valuable, and more importantly, I want to thank you for signing on and being part of our CCW Nashville program. It's speakers like you who have this real-world perspective and these fresh ideas and can really lay out the action steps it takes to success that make our events such great destinations. And we definitely I can't wait to meet you there. I can't wait for our attendees to get to hear you there, and it's going to be a great time. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And for CCW Digital, this has been Brian Cantor.